Hello and welcome to the Week in Nintendo. I'm Brandon and I'm joined, as always, by Steve, and we're here to talk about Nintendo. That's right, this is GVG's Nintendo podcast, and what a Nintendo podcast it's about to be. There's been some tumultuous times in the last 24 hours for Nintendo fans, us included. In case you're living under a rock listening to this podcast, Nintendo Switch 2 pre-orders have finally gone live in North America, and it was rough, to say the least. We're on the other side of it now, but Steve, I'm just going to throw it right to you. How was that experience for you?
It was harrowing is the word that I would use. And I want to be clear, because I woke up to clickbait, like thumbnails and headlines. You can blame Nintendo a little, maybe, but you can't really blame Nintendo for how pre-orders went last night. But I set up a command center because I was determined to get a Switch online because, all y'all out there in the GV gang know that I have a day job. And sitting outside GameStop for 4 hours on a Thursday is not really conducive to a corporate 9-to-5 day job. Especially in a world where your Thursday meeting is on camera every week. So they're like, hey, that doesn't look like your house. That looks like a guy in a Pikachu hoodie behind you. So I had to get an online pre-order. I had to make one work. And the options, for those of you that aren't North American last night, were basically Walmart, Target, Best Buy. GameStop didn't open till this morning as we're recording this. This is Thursday the 24th. Yeah. And
yeah.
So those were my three choices. I had to go with one of those. And I just rolled the dice as hard as I could and had a tab open for each. And it was, I think we all kind of followed along in the Discord, but it was a mess, like trying to secure one. And spoiler alert, I did, thank goodness. But there was at least an hour where I was certain that it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, I was kind of experiencing a similar thing. For myself, I was kind of banking on going to GameStop and doing an in-store pre-order. I did that with the PS5. I did that with the Switch 1. I did that with the new 3DS. And I had success every single time. So that was kind of always the plan for me. But just in case something went awry, I decided I was going to try and get a pre-order last night. And spoiler alert, I didn't get a pre-order last night. It was pretty rough.
I was shocked to find out I was the only American member of GVG who got an online pre-order at all.
It's a shame though, because like Thursday's payday in this household. So we weren't quite ready last night to foot the bill for a Switch 2. Because I did end up getting a pre-order through Walmart. But when they tried to authorize my payment, they do a hold on your account. Then they take the charge off and then charge you again at shipping. I didn't realize that until after the fact, so they failed the authorization and then canceled my pre-order.
Yeah, I didn't realize that they... maybe my memory's faulty, but I didn't realize that retailers now charge you or authorize you, let's be clear, for the entire amount. My recollection of this, and I don't pre-order online super often, but my recollection of this is that it's usually like $1, and they just do that to make sure the card number is real and good.
Yeah. And
then they're like, hey, we'll charge you the $540 something after tax, on the day of, or when we're ready to ship. But my wife got through like first out of all of us, like out of our little group. So for me, we had like a little Switch 2 pre-order party. It was me, my wife, my sister, and my nephew. And we were all trying to order online, which I'm sure looked very suspicious to like whatever tracks bot activity, but like 4 different computers in the same house, all trying to order. But she got through within like 5 minutes. I remember, cause we share an Apple Card, and on the Apple Card, like, it just shows you on your phone the minute anything gets charged. Mm-hmm. And I heard her just go, I got it. And then I saw the charge pop up and I was like, oh, dang, I'm going to be next, right? Right? and I proceeded to sit for almost 90 minutes just waiting to get a pre-order somewhere.
Oh, it was tough. And then there was the whole thing with Best Buy, because Best Buy's pre-orders didn't actually go live at the scheduled time. They waited 30 minutes, and I'm pretty sure that was intentional.
It had to be.
Because the pre-orders were 30 minutes later on the dot.
Right. I was wondering if they were basically playing chicken, like they were waiting to see how it played out with other retailers, or maybe just doing a final check of their systems to make sure they didn't have the issues, because Target was notoriously bad. I saw people reporting that their cart was being randomly emptied. My mom was trying to buy one at Target, and she was on the phone with us, and she kept saying that it kept deleting her shipping address every time she entered it. So checkout at Target was apparently a nightmare for a lot of people. My sister tried to get one at Target, out of sheer desperation, basically trying every single store that had them to try to land one someplace. But my goal was Best Buy, because at least here where I live, Best Buy lets you pre-order online, but get it in store at midnight. And so that was kind of, for me, the best of both worlds, right? Like I wanted the GameStop pre-order so I could get it at 9 p.m., but I also couldn't afford the time it would take to go land one at the store. So I was one of the folks just F5ing the hell out of Best Buy for like a half hour, just waiting for pre-orders to open up there. And then when I did, I was greeted with the all too familiar like Best Buy automated pre-order line that I swear doesn't really work. Like I don't know who coded that, but I'm very bothered by your work. Like I don't like that.
It didn't work for me. I got right in right when it started. And I was in line for, I want to say, an hour and a half. I got booted from the line twice. The page just refreshed itself on one occasion, and on the next occasion, my cart was just suddenly empty. But then it would let me get back in line. And I heard some people had that happen to them, but once they got back into line, the pre-order just worked. But that was not my experience, and neither and it didn't work out for Derek either. We were both in a Best Buy line, and we both got hit with the sold out screen at the same time.
Yeah, it was very weird for me. I ended up landing on Best Buy. I also sat in line for like 90 minutes, and then it eventually just shot me through and let me pre-order a Switch 2 at my local store for pickup. So I'll be there at 9 p.m. on the 4th of June to get mine. But I had to wait in that line every time for every single Switch 2 item I wanted. So like, cause you could get it. And the problem was Best Buy's like, oh, it's in your cart for 10 minutes. We'll hold this Switch 2 for you. And I was like, I'm not going to take a chance. I'm just checking out now, because, if I lose out on a Pro controller or a camera or whatever, okay, fine. But if I lose out on the whole console because I was jumping back into line to get a controller, I would have cried. And so I had to check out. And every time I bought something, if I wanted an accessory, they just dump you back in the line to wait for the accessory too. And I'm like, awesome. I can't wait for this. It took me hours to pre-order just like a console, a controller, a camera, and Cyberpunk.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad that I didn't go for any games or any amiibo or anything, because getting the console on its own was a pain. I was also in line for Pro controller and a camera in addition to the Switch 2, and I wonder if that just kind of destroyed any possibility of me getting one at all.
Yeah, for me, the minute I got in, I just froze. I just let that tab sit there forever. And I was like, it'll either do something or it won't.
But yeah, eventually when that sold out screen appeared, I just called it for the night. I went to bed. I was like, I'm not waiting for this anymore. I'll just say what you will about GameStop, but they've never failed me on a console pre-order. Never once. So I just kind of like put my faith into them for this. Yeah,
it's really interesting because I was getting prepared mentally, like steeling myself for the fact that I was just going to have to call in sick to work on a day where I just had a packed calendar full of meetings and be like, sorry, daddy's got to get a Switch too. I might not have a job afterwards, but I'll have a Switch. And so I was losing hope pretty rapidly because I was in a room full of people who couldn't get it. And then I had you guys on Discord who also weren't getting a pre-order. I was like, oh, it's just over, isn't it? Like, I remember moments before getting mine, I was like, I think we're cooked, like in our Discord. And then suddenly Best Buy's like, not you, not today. I'll let you through this once. But yeah, it was a wild night because you really had to be kind of looped in. Like, I don't like using Twitter that much anymore, but I was leaning on Wario 64's post notifications all night long just to kind of get the updates on what was happening. Like,
yeah,
you know, when Best Buy didn't come up, he's like, no, Best Buy is still not live. I was like, thank you, Wario 64. I need you so much right now. You know, and then at some point, Walmart just decided to disable their queuing system. And if you were in it, you were just frozen in space, but then you could just waltz right in virtually, so to speak, and pre-order one with no wait, which I did. And then I canceled because I'm not going to be that guy who holds on to multiple pre-orders once I got my Best Buy pre-order. So Walmart at some point was just like, nah, you could just order it. Like, we'll just let you.
Yeah, that's how I ended up getting the pre-order that I got, even though it didn't stick. Yeah, it was weird. I just kind of waltzed right in and waltzed right out with a pre-order, like nothing happened.
Yeah, there no waiting, just right in and you could get it. It was the strangest thing. I think their pre-order queue system broke and they had to turn it off for a bit.
It's funny though, because like so many people were waiting in line, and I think that news was so slow to spread that it made it easy for everyone else who did hear about it.
Oh yeah, the minute I saw it. So the funny thing happened was I ended up playing like a game of like a shell game with Switch 2 pre-orders at one point because Wario announced that there was no line for just the console with no game. And at this point I was devoid of hope. I was like, this might be my only shot at getting a Switch 2 on launch. So I pre-ordered that. And then as soon as I checked out, he was like, oh, now they've removed the line on the Mario Kart bundle. So I canceled the Switch with no game and pre-ordered the one with Mario Kart, and that worked. And then shortly thereafter, Best Buy let me through. So I just had this like movement of like pre-ordering one, getting it, being very excited, canceling it, securing another order, and then canceling the previous one. Because yeah, I feel so bad looking now in the morning at how many ended up on eBay, and just know it's going to happen, but man, it feels bad.
Yeah, I saw some listings for like $750, and I'm like, come on, like, really? Do we need to keep doing this?
It's just stealing joy. Like, that's what you're quite literally stealing joy from another person. I mean, I get it. People got to eat. Economy's certainly a thing, but it just feels bad when you know that these consoles definitely all would have sold to people who desperately wanted them. And you've got people just buying them up with bots so that they can jack up the price by a few $100 and turn a quick profit. And I know that those will sell, but I also love the fact that people are not only reporting all of these scalper posts, but also just making posts that are for MSRP just to mess with them, to like ruin the eBay economy for these consoles.
I've even seen and heard that eBay is taking some of them down.
Yeah, this is a similar thing to what happened with the PS5 30th anniversary edition. Sony did what they could to stop scalpers from buying up 30th anniversary PS5s, but ultimately a ton of them still made it up because of course they did. And eBay took a significant number of those down. People were mass reporting them because apparently eBay doesn't let you sell pre-orders. I didn't know that. And they'll just, if you don't have the item in hand, you're technically not supposed to sell it. It's a violation of the terms of service. So yeah, these could all come down. It's just eBay very inconsistently applies that rule. And I don't know, eBay is like the Twitch of digital commerce.
It'd be super fun to get all those reported and get a bunch of those accounts banned.
I'm not saying to go to eBay and search Switch 2 and report anything that's above MSRP, but I'm not saying that.
So my experience this morning was a much different one. I'm in a Discord with a bunch of other like Nintendo creators, and a lot of them also struggled to get a Switch 2 last night. So a lot of them were also banking on going to GameStop and getting an in-store. And just because of the way time zones worked, a lot of them got to do that before I did, along with Derek. And every single person I heard who went to GameStop got a pre-order. Like, I haven't seen anyone get turned away.
I'm very impressed. I was very nervous. I went to my local GameStop because I knew I needed to have some info in my back pocket as a potential fallback option. Like I said, really couldn't afford to have missed work, but if I had to, and it was really cool to see that they were not only getting a significant number, but also being very transparent about what that number is, like posting it on the doors at stores all over the country so that you were aware of what you were in for.
Yeah, they took a step further too. About, I want to say like 45 minutes before opening, they came outside and had these sheets of paper with every single pre-orderable item for Switch 2 on it, with the prices and release dates and everything. And they went down the line one by one, asked you what you wanted, and if they had enough allotment, they gave you a little ticket that said what you pre-ordered, and you just take it to the counter once everyone gets let in.
That's cool.
I showed up maybe like an hour 20 before the store was supposed to open, and the line was already really long. So I was like, uh-oh, I'm not going to get one, aren't I? But then I saw the sign. They had 120 Switch 2 pre-orders, 40 base models, and then 80 bundles.
It's really interesting to see that kind of difference between how many stores are getting for the Mario Kart bundle versus just kind of the vanilla Switch 2. It's obvious Nintendo knows what people are going to go for.
They were wise in their decision making on that front. That said, there were a lot of people who just got the base model because there are some folks who want to get the game physically, or maybe they don't like Mario Kart. The guy in line next to me was very adamant about how much he didn't like Mario Kart. And I'm like, why are you here, bro?
I think there's
regardless.
Oh, go ahead.
Regardless, there's still a lot of stuff coming out on launch day. And then being a Switch 1 to Switch 2 owner, like, yeah, getting one at launch makes perfect sense. So if you're not getting Mario Kart, I'm just fooling. I'm just joking. But you are wrong.
You're definitely wrong. I agree with you on that. Mario Kart World. I would also say that there's a very strong case for people who don't like Mario Kart liking Mario Kart World, because it is wildly different to what you probably expect from Mario Kart at this point in time.
Yeah. So the tickets that they handed out had a number on it to indicate which number in line you were for that particular bundle. I had to have at least 40, 50 people in front of me, and I was number 29 for Mario Kart World bundle.
Wow.
Kind of blew my mind. Yeah. But yeah, they went down the entire line. Every single person who lined up got a Switch 2, and there were a lot of us. I was very impressed. They definitely had some left over by the time the big rush was through. They opened the doors like 20 minutes before the store actually opened, and they just started letting us check out. I got to the counter, and I was able to additionally pre-order a camera as well as a Pro Controller 2, which I was very excited about because Derek said they had none for pre-order at his GameStop.
That's really interesting. I did not expect the camera and the Pro Controller to be like really hot in demand items. Especially, and it's interesting because we are clearly steeped in games discourse. Like, we hear about this stuff all day, every day from every corner of the internet. And one of the louder objections to the entire Switch 2 launch lineup is the price, right? And so you'd think people are going to go for like the bare minimum, not as many extras, not as many accessories. I kind of expected that I could walk into any store on launch day and grab a camera and a Pro controller. Seeing how pre-orders were going online, I got the sense that I was very wrong about that prediction. I don't think that you're going to be able to find much hardware. In fact, I chose very specifically my Wii pre-order shirt to talk about Switch 2 pre-orders, not just because Reggie recently shared that he still has a bunch of these. I would like a new one, Reggie. But because I really get the feeling that it's going to be like 2007 all over again. We're going to see, or 2006 all over again, where we're going to see just, out of stocks everywhere. And it'll be something where when new Switch 2s come in, people are going to snap them up pretty quick.
Yeah, and that speaks nothing of just the tariff situation on top of it. Like, you think it's bad now, it's only going to get worse. Yeah, I hope that's not the case. I ended up not getting a Wii maybe until 3 or 4 months after it launched. And I might have told this story on the show before, but like my mom works at Walmart. She's worked at Walmart for like, I think over 30 years now, 35 years. And she was just in the store, one morning, and an employee was brought back into the store by the police.
Oh,
with the Wii that he had stowed away for himself. They brought it back into the store along with him, and my mom was right there, and she was like, "Can I buy that?" And they let her.
You saved a Wii from an illegal fate.
Yeah. I hope it's not that bad that you have to get your Switch 2 in a bizarro situation like that, but it's starting to look like that might be the case. I'm going to be honest with you. I did not see it being this bad. I really thought the Switch 2 was going to be a significant drop off from Switch 1, and I think I might be wrong.
In a weird way, I think that the economic uncertainty in the US might be helping. And that's because there's a lot of speculation that the price will go up later. And people might say, I'm going to get it now before it's $550. I'm going to get it now before it's $600 or whatever. Because Nintendo was also very particular in their wording, like, as of now, it's going to launch at $499 or $449 if you get, no game with it. And I think that people are kind of seeing that and being like, well, the guy in charge of the country could ruin this for us at any moment. So let's just go get it now before he makes it more expensive. But on top of that, it is really hard to underestimate what Nintendo's done here, because they've created, there's the Steam Deck, there's the ROG Ally. And as people have correctly pointed out in the comments of previous episodes, they make up an absolutely infinitesimal fraction of the user base for this class of device. Nintendo essentially invented this class of device. They took existing technology and packaged it in a way that literally everyone wants. It's basically the iPhone of gaming at this point. And they own this market. And so they sold 150 million of those things. And now they're releasing a follow-up that, while people have valid concerns about pricing and availability, no one is saying, oh, it's not better. Like, no one is saying that. Everyone's saying it's wildly better. And so
people are upset about price because it's better.
Yeah. People are upset because they look at it and they're like, that thing slaps. I want one. Why is it so expensive? If Nintendo found a way to drop the price to $399, I think we would have been cooked last night. I don't know that we would have gotten a pre-order. I think people would have been fighting over this thing. So I don't think there's any dispute over the quality of it, the fact that it's better. I think it's just inaccessible to some people at its current price point.
Yeah, and that's going to be the unfortunate truth, I think. There's been a lot of discussion online about gaming being a luxury, and that's true. It started as a luxury, back in the NES days. And, you could argue for a little while there that it really wasn't, especially if you were a Nintendo fan, because Nintendo often came in at a pretty reasonable price. But, that's not happening so much right now. So, you might see less people who are like core enthusiast gamers, being there right at the beginning.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely reduced potential for market penetration. Obviously, the more expensive anything gets, the harder it is to obtain for large groups. But I do think Nintendo's going to have no issue selling out of their stock for a while. I think that kind of the forced scarcity, because they're clearly having to import all American Switch 2 units from Vietnam versus the much larger facilities in China that currently produce them, is going to impact what exists on store shelves. I think this is one time where Nintendo can't legitimately be accused of manufacturing scarcity. It's kind of being forced on them at this point. And there is kind of a weird like psychological effect, right? If you, it's quite literally how I got my first Xbox. I had zero interest in the Xbox, the original. And I talked mad crap about it. Like I was, I was a much younger me, a less intelligent version of myself. So I was full blown fanboy mode, defending PlayStation Nation over Xbox. And I just told myself I'm not going to get one. But the funniest thing happened. I worked at Target during that time in the electronics counter, selling video games. And when the Xbox launch day rolled around and I saw, my little pyramid of Xboxes that I'd built behind the counter and people coming in one after another, excitedly buying them, I was like, I want one. And of course there were none left. I saw people scoop them all up in a matter of minutes. And when I saw that, I was like, there's got to be something to this. I want one. And I remember getting off work that day, paycheck in hand, because I was a broke boy. And so I cashed my paycheck at a check cashing place. That's how you know I was broke. And I took some of it and I went down to Best Buy and I bought an Xbox that afternoon. And you know what? It worked. I loved it. I still love Xbox to this day, even though they're trying to find every reason to make me not. People see that though, and there's a psychological effect of seeing people want something and it being simultaneously difficult to obtain that make people want that thing even more. And I think that's what we're going to see with the Switch 2 is just pre-orders are going to, I would guarantee that the entire first shipment to America is probably darn near accounted for at this point. And people are going to, they're going to see lines of people waiting to pick it up. They're going to see people leaving stores with the Switch 2 in their hands. It will be in the non-gaming news for a while. And then they'll be like, I got to see what this is about. I want to get one of those. And it'll drive scarcity for, I suspect at least 6 months after the console drops.
Yeah, I'm curious how long that will last. Switch was also in an interesting position back in 2020 with Animal Crossing coming out and, the world effectively shutting down. I remember people who I knew who weren't like super into games were asking me how to get a Switch, where to find one, what they should buy, because they wanted to play Animal Crossing.
Oh, yeah. My mom, who is notoriously not a gamer, I love her to death, but she does not game. She bought a Switch for Animal Crossing. And she even was asking me about the Switch too. She was like, should I get one? And I was like, well, I think you should, but you know who I am. Like, you know what you raised. And I was like, realistically, I don't think you're going to play Mario Kart, but you could hop on, game chat and talk to me or my sister while you play Animal Crossing. I was like, my mom has like 2,000 hours in Animal Crossing. And I'm like,
holy cow.
That's more than I think I've put into any Switch game myself. And so I was just like, they got her. And the fact that she was even considering, despite the fact that she still only plays Animal Crossing, tells me that there's probably going to be more demand for Switch 2 than we think. And it's going to last it's going to have longer legs because the type of folks that just picked up Animal Crossing are almost certainly not going to queue up to get one on day one, but they will. they will, especially when they see that they can't find one on launch day.
Yeah. If you were an Animal Crossing enjoyer, and maybe not the biggest gamer, if you've got, if you're in a good position and you could stand to throw a little bit of money away, probably wouldn't be a bad idea to grab a Switch 2 like now.
Yeah.
Save yourself the headache later. Animal Crossing is not an if, it is a when. So, might as well just prepare early.
Yeah, I could also see a world in which New Horizons, given its phenomenal sales, gets a Switch 2 edition, where they're just like, hey, there's like 40 million of you out there that play this game. Why don't you buy our new $450 console and have it not take 3 years to load?
Oh, it's so weird. Like, yesterday, Switch 2 was this thing that was like so far away, so unobtainable. And as of today, it's just counting down the days until I can go pick it up.
I received an interesting, so last night on Bluesky, I posted, a cheeky joke about me fortune shine on us all trying to pre-order Switch 2s. And when I got mine, I retweeted that and was like, or I don't know. Anyway, I reposted that and basically said, I got it, mission accomplished. And one of the replies that shook me was someone who pointed out that the wait time from pre-order to release is actually an entire week shorter than it was for Switch 1. And I was like, you're kidding me, because that felt like it flew by. Like, it felt like God. It was just there in the blink of an eye. And so I'm like, we're not that far. We're going to be playing Switch 2 in, I think, 6 weeks? 5 weeks?
6 weeks to the day.
Yeah, we're 6 weeks away. And that doesn't sound like a whole lot when we've been waiting 8 years. So
the first mainline Mario Kart since 2014 comes out in 6 weeks.
Yeah, it is.
The next Nintendo
wild.
console in 8 years comes out in 6 weeks.
Yeah, this has been one of Nintendo's longest generations. And if you count just consoles, like you take it away from portables, it is our longest generation. So it's really amazing. Like, it feels like we've been waiting for this forever. We've been talking about, Switch 2 for literal years now. I thought we were going to be playing Switch 2 last year. And so it's really, there's nothing quite like the launch cycle for a Nintendo console. Like, don't get me wrong, it's very exciting. I just told you how excited I was for the Xbox. It's very exciting when Microsoft and Sony drop new hardware as well. But there's something just electric about a new Nintendo console in particular, because you're always waiting to see what kind of, frankly, zany stuff they're going to do. You're waiting for like the really fun stuff and the kind of Nintendo-y stuff. And, this console launch in particular, I think feels really exciting to me because it's the best of both worlds. I get just a new Nintendo piece of hardware with, kind of an interesting tweak or quirk to it. But I also get the sense that Nintendo is trying to bring power back into the conversation. They're trying to compete at some level on power. And we haven't seen a Nintendo that gives a crap about visual fidelity in a very long time.
Not since the GameCube. And, I was 7 when the GameCube came out. So I can't exactly remember like what Nintendo's own attitude was about power, but even then I don't remember them being very forward about it.
No, Nintendo in the GameCube era they weren't very boastful of the power of the GameCube, but they definitely did not shy away from comparisons. They were not afraid of, especially the PS2, right? Like, they were visually very, very far ahead of the PS2 and only slightly behind the Xbox, which was amazing given the GameCube was a purple lunchbox. Mm-hmm. But Nintendo really started shying away from technological boasting after the N64, which, they were very like they were very feeling themselves when the N64 dropped, and then they realized that they made some mistakes there and kind of backed off from the technological talk in the GameCube era. But it was interesting to see a Nintendo that was at least very confident in the run up to the GameCube, showing off Mario 128 and all this other stuff. And then we now had, decades where Nintendo went quiet, didn't want to discuss their hardware, wanted to discuss this so-called blue ocean strategy and all this other stuff. But now we're back to a Nintendo that's talking about like, this thing does 4K, 120 FPS, VRR, HDR. Like these are terms that I'm not used to Nintendo throwing around. And it's nice to see that part of Nintendo back to a degree. Like I'm excited to hold the Switch 2 in my hands and be like, this thing is powerful.
And it doesn't come at the cost of Nintendo being Nintendo. I think the narrative there has gotten way out of hand. Like, the Wii U gamepad was cool. I mean, it wasn't super useful, but it was cool. 3D on the 3DS is kind of whatever, but the 3DS itself, cool. The Wii, revolutionary for the time, even if the technology actually wasn't all that great. But they improved it later. I think people are underestimating, like, the uniqueness of having the ability to control two mice at the same time, adding that onto gyro, what that does for couch gaming. Nintendo's still gonna Nintendo. And I've even seen some criticism regarding like their peripheral strategy, like a cool game like Ring Fit that releases because they release a peripheral that makes it do what it does. And I'm like, I think that's just a much safer strategy than hedging your entire console on that bet.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because I feel like people are forgetting their history. With the Wii, we had so much plastic schlock that both Nintendo and third parties were putting out there that you had kind of just a closet full of crap that you used one time and then never again. Like I remember the Wii U or the Wii Sports baseball bat and tennis add-ons that you'd see where you just shoved the remote in a more familiar handle. And that's not something I want to go back to, right? Like, in the early 2010s to mid 2010s, or no, early 2010s, I'm sorry, late 2000s, early 2010s. I remember walking into GameStops and seeing like Rock Band kits that were like 85% off because they just needed to get rid of them. They're like, we have so many plastic guitars, please end our suffering. And Nintendo, learned from that because they were basically just creating tons of e-waste. And, now you've got games where instead of making a gimmick, for lack of a better term, the focal point of a console, you're making a competent console that also has these optional capabilities to it. And I think that that's a far better way to go because you can communicate the value of a handheld console way easier than this thing uses mice like your computer, in a world where we increasingly are backing away from mice for computing inputs. I think it makes a ton of sense to just focus on core functionality and then have really cool additional stuff that is a choice that you have.
When Ring Fit was announced, I was super excited because I thought the Ring Con was cool. I thought the entire concept was super sleek and slick. I felt the exact same way when Mario Kart Live Home Circuit was announced. I was like, this is cool. This is like weirdo Nintendo, just doing weirdo Nintendo stuff. But it didn't come at the expense of my core gaming experience.
Yeah, you can still sit back with a traditional controller, play games the way most people play games. And when you want to do the weirdo stuff, here's a little weirdo thing with a little weirdo add-on that works, in a very weird way.
When I want to play WarioWare Move It, I grab out those Joy-Cons and I do things that you shouldn't see on camera. But you know what? I'm so happy I can do that.
My wife has a sticker saved to her phone of me doing a pose from WarioWare Move It, and I hate it so much, but at the same time, it's one of my favorite things.
I love that game. I love the original on Wii. I'm so glad it got a sequel. But yeah, I think people who are saying that weirdo cool Nintendo is like gone or just they're not seeing the forest for the trees here. I think Switch 2 just being a straight upgrade of the Switch 1 was the right call this time.
It's the thing that makes the most sense.
When we're going from the Wii to the Wii U, people were tired of Waggle. They were tired of, every game just having motion controls slapped on in some way. They wanted something different. So when you saw the Wii U gamepad, even though, it didn't really catch on, at least it was different. And then the same thing could be said for the Switch. When you saw the Switch, the whole concept, immediately you understood, like, that's why that exists. And people like that thing existing so much that they just did it again. Because I'm not tired of gaming handheld.
No, I don't think anybody is. And I think that people want Nintendo to do wacky stuff are not thinking about the fact that like every other console Nintendo has made for a while has just done miserably. Wii U was one of Nintendo's greatest flops. GameCube was one of Nintendo's greatest flops, unfortunately, undeservedly in both cases, in my opinion.
And that was right after the 64, which was also a flop.
Yeah. Nintendo needs to stick with a winning formula. And I think that by vacating a market segment you yourself created, they would be shooting themselves in the foot. It doesn't make sense to leave a concept this successful behind. Nobody wants the Switch to disappear.
They've directly encouraged their consumers who are installed in the Switch ecosystem to just move on to the next one. They're conditioned to do it with iPhones and, smartphones. So I think it was a really safe bet. Steam Deck has already had multiple variations of that existing design since in between now and Switch, or in between Switch 1 and Switch 2 releasing. So I don't think it was far-fetched for Nintendo to stick to their guns with this one. I think it was the right call. I'm excited that all my games carry over and they're going to look and play better, even if I have to spend a little money, which, whatever. But I think this is the best case scenario. Yeah. So I'm excited. I can't believe we're so close already. Like you said this before, Nintendo console launches are these milestones, right? For me, I've been a Nintendo fan since I was 3 years old. I had a Super Nintendo at 3 years old. I played Super Mario World for the first time and it blew my mind. And I've been a Mario head ever since. So every Nintendo console release is a new era of my life. Even that might be cringe to say, but that's how I view it.
I don't disagree with you even a little bit. I can look back to the Wii U launch and becoming a father. And that I can't think of a bigger milestone in your life than having a kid. I just remember setting up my console and a few months later, my daughter being born. And to me, those are, it's such a small gap that it's my daughter came into being after I got my Wii U, and it was the beginning of that generation. I played so many games that are foundational to my position within games media now while holding her. The gamepad was the way I was able to cover a lot of games back then. And so I do agree with you. You look back at these generations as points in your life, points in time. And I remember, the Wii and being a kid working at Target and hanging out with a whole different group of friends. By the time the Wii U rolls around, I'm having my first kid. And now with the Switch 2, that same kid is now asking me to get her one because she's a gamer now.
Super Nintendo was my preschool era. I got an N64 right after finishing kindergarten. So that was my grade school era. And then a couple years into grade school is when I got a GameCube. And then, GameCube is really the console that I think was the most formative for me. I think Daniel shares similar sentiment there. We both hold the GameCube very close to our hearts because, that's when games really started to mean something to us the most. But then the Wii was my bridge between middle school and high school. Wii U was my college console, and then Switch was my first console as a young adult moving out on his own for the first time. I moved into this house 4 months after the Switch came out.
Wow.
It means a lot to me. This entire console generation has been my adulthood. And just like you with the Wii U, Switch 2, my daughter's a year and a half old. The first game she plays with me is probably going to be a Switch 2 game. And that's going to be a very precious moment for me, but try not to get emotional right now. Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's just crazy.
It is. I didn't even think about the Switch and my link to my daughter there. The first game we ever played together was Luigi's Mansion 3. Like, we played through the whole thing. And that to me is a very like treasured memory, you know? And now we play all kinds of games together all the time. And, you know, I'm excited to eventually, not getting one at lunch, darling, I love you, to eventually get her a Switch too. And play that with her. Like my youngest, who is 8 now, she wasn't even like, she was 4 months away from birth when the Switch came out, you know? She told me she wants a Switch 2 for her birthday, which is in a few months. And I'm like, that's weird. That's a weird way to measure one's life.
Oh, well, we're getting all sentimental with Switch 2, but we got to dig into our mailbag and see how you all are doing after all this pre-order mayhem. So let's dig on in here and see what's going on with you guys. We'll start with a funny question from GA Studios. How many of your organs did you sell last night?
All of them.
I don't have any organs left. Here's an interesting question from Natalie, and I kind of covered this myself a little bit earlier, but I'm curious what it's like for you. What was your first experience with buying a console on launch?
On launch, so I'm gonna date myself big time here. It's weird because there was a time, and this is very important to note, where getting a console on launch was nigh on impossible, because there was no internet, and so technically, I'll give you both versions. Technically, it was the N64, because I ordered it from Japan, like when it came out. And this was back when Nintendo launched consoles in Japan, like well in advance of the American release. And I was just old enough to know that. So I was like 14, and I ordered one from Japan for like $300 that I had saved up over the course of a summer. And it got like shipped to me. And this was so long ago that like, you just paid the UPS driver when he showed up at your house. You're like, how much is it? And you had to give him a money order for the exact amount that the console cost. And he was responsible for collecting your payment. My UPS driver apparently like tried to come to my house, and I didn't answer or something. And he called my landline phone, I'm that old, and explained to us that he would be at Jack in the Box down the road if I wanted to go get my N64. So I hopped on my bike, rode to Jack in the Box, paid him, and got my Nintendo 64 and took it home.
What a great story. I love that.
I think I might be the only kid who ever imported an N64 at a Jack in the Box. It's that was my very first time. I imported the GameCube, which is a whole other harrowing story if you understand American history. But my first like in-person store pickup was the Wii in 2006, just at the GameStop next to the Target I worked at. And I remember just feeling like my whole body was on fire with excitement for that. I literally like was marveling at holding a Wii remote for the first time. I was like, oh, and I think there's something that, you know, it makes me a little sad that I didn't get to pre-order in person this time, because I saw your pictures and Derek's pictures, and I just felt this like welling up of jealousy in my heart of just, I wanted to be around other excited people and like talk excitedly about what we were all there to do. And I missed out on that today, but I am very hopeful that I'll get to do that on June 4th.
Yeah, there was a great sense of community and a great sense of fear and anxiety amongst everybody in line. Like, am I going to get a Switch 2? And then we found out all of us got Switch 2s. So we were everyone in that line was very happy. But outside of the Wii debacle in my household, I got the 3DS at launch, but I ordered that online, so it was just delivered to me. You can hear my daughter in the background. Hi, honey. I'm recording. I love you. Bye. So the 3DS and the Wii U I both got online, but the new 3DS XL was my first like midnight launch at a store. And that particular launch, I was like over the moon for, because Majora's Mask 3D was coming out alongside the console, and Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, which I was absolutely like fiending for by this point, because Monster Hunter Tri was my first Monster Hunter game. Then I got Monster Hunter Tri Ultimate on Wii U and 3DS later on. But Monster Hunter 4 was like the first new Monster Hunter game for me. It was basically my Monster Hunter 2. That was my moment. And I was absolutely like, I don't know. I was in a different state of being waiting for that game to come out. I got the Frosted Metal Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate Special Edition console, which came with the game pre-installed. And then, of course, I went home with Majora's Mask 3D as well. But that was a great experience. I did that with Red. She and I were both there together waiting, because she was also fiending for Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate.
For those of you who don't know, Red animated our intro.
Yeah, not the Win intro, but the main one.
Yeah, the big flashy GVG intro with the loud music.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was just a great experience, you know, being around a bunch of people who are excited for the same thing you are. A lot of Monster Hunter fans. You don't get a lot of Monster Hunter fans gathered in a single spot. So like that was a good experience for me. And then my only other like midnight release like I ever went to was for the Switch.
Oh, I'm jealous. I hosted my local GameStop's midnight release for the Switch, which was a lot of fun. We played 1-2 Switch. I got to show off Breath of the Wild a little bit, but it was really neat. Like it was my first time getting a Nintendo console early. And so, and frankly, maybe my last time, who knows, but it was my first time getting one early. And, Nintendo gave me permission to show it off at GameStop the night before release. I mean, embargo was already up anyway. And when GameStop, I went to cancel my Switch pre-order, because I had one. And so I was there, and the district manager happened to be there, and he's like, can you show it off like at the store tonight? And I was like, yeah, fine. I live blogged it on Nintendo Life, and we just kind of hung around with people who were waiting for their console and like played it with them. And it was so much fun. I was so excited to just like see how excited everyone else was to finally get their hands on it, because I'd been playing it for like 3 weeks at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. Hi, honey. I may just ask an interesting question. How do you feel about Nintendo's communication style over the last few weeks? It feels like they've been letting journalists deliver a lot of, admittedly bad, news on their behalf, which is very odd when they just released an app designed to give them direct access to their consumers. I think this is a difficult one, because Nintendo has been put in a difficult situation. You know, especially like with all the tariffs and whatnot, and having to delay pre-orders. Like, I doubt they expected they had to do that.
Yeah, they didn't. I don't think that this was in their calculate. I think Doug Bowser went on to say like, oh, we didn't calculate tariffs into our pricing, which I understand, but I don't believe. I think that you know, Nintendo is not new to this. Like they know how to price their hardware. And I do think that to some degree they anticipated a certain level of tariffs and priced the Switch 2 accordingly. Because if you look at the Japan only console, it's way cheaper. Like $300 or something, you know, like it's $299 for the Japan only console.
And that one was like a double faceted thing. Like I think tariffs were involved in that whole situation, but it's mostly because the yen is weak, and there was an issue with Japan importing a bunch of PS5s from other countries to get them cheaper.
Right.
And
oh no, I don't disagree with you even one bit, but my point is more that Nintendo clearly knows what the global economic situation is like, and they understand strategically how to price hardware to appeal to their consumer base in whatever country they're marketing it in. And so I think they did build in some kind of buffer based on economic uncertainty, but I don't think they expected it to be as wild as it ended up being. Like, I don't think anybody could have predicted 145% tariffs on Chinese goods. And so I think Nintendo did get caught basically in a situation where, yeah, the PR playbook went out the window a bit, and they just had to wing it for a little while. And that, for a company as big as Nintendo, is probably not something they're used to having to do.
And, that's kind of how it was like for the last couple of weeks. They were kind of flying by the seat of their pants. But, now we're getting direct information from Furukawa, like that they can't meet demand for Japanese pre-orders. And again, today or yesterday, that they're not going to be able to meet demand for U.S. pre-orders.
Yeah. I think that Nintendo is being more transparent than they've ever been.
Yeah, I agree. I don't quite remember what it was like with the first Switch. I pre-ordered that one in store at GameStop like the morning of and had no issues. I didn't even try to order one online, so I don't quite have memories of what that was like. But yeah, I don't remember them being so forward about this stuff. They've said on multiple occasions, if I recall, that they were ramping production to meet demand. But this is the first time that they've said that, and I believed them.
Yeah, it feels very genuine at this point in time. I think that Nintendo, it's difficult because obviously there has been a lot of bad news to deliver with the Switch 2, right? Depending on how you view bad news, though, it's very, I think that on one hand, like people, our game keycard reactions, like people are very upset about that. But at the same time, a business like Nintendo, and I talk about this all the time, like you're never going to come out on stage and be like, this product is worse. Like we've made a worse thing. And I don't think Nintendo has a message like that they need to deliver. But, you're not going to come out and say, oh, we've made these game key cards, but they suck and you shouldn't buy. Like, that's just not something you're going to expect any company to do. And so while some people view it as bad news, I view it as kind of an improvement, right? Like, few things are as crappy as opening a box and finding just a slip of paper with a code on it inside. It feels like you just didn't buy anything. A key card is at least like, hey, we've made it tradable. Like you can give it to someone else.
Yeah, and that doesn't need to be connected to the internet in order for you to launch your game. Because the license is on the card. So if you're offline, you can still play it. And I think a lot of people are overlooking that.
I certainly did. I forgot about that. And so, I mean, that's a good thing. That's a really good thing, right? I just think it's kind of, when you define bad news with the Switch 2, I think a lot of it is subjective. Like what is and isn't bad news is going to shift depending on your view of certain choices.
I mean, I think it's clear that they thought the price was bad news because it wasn't in the direct.
Yeah. Well, and that's again why I think they built tariffs into the price, or they built some kind of exemption, because the direct was probably made weeks in advance, and it may just be that the decision on the price came in pretty hot because they were like, let's look at what's going on and we'll price accordingly. Because even the launch day was mentioned surprisingly sparingly in that direct. Like it was clear that a lot of people didn't know.
It showed up in the middle of the presentation.
Yeah.
Like now we'll share the launch date of the Switch 2. And I'm like, why are we doing that like 14 minutes into this presentation and not at the beginning or the end?
And even then you could see that some of those segments, even after, were filmed without direct knowledge of when it would launch. Because, they're like, oh, this game is launching alongside the Switch 2. I'm like, you could say June 5th, like we know it now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a messy situation. I do want to double down a little bit on the game card situation. We have a question from Professor Bonk. Do you think Nintendo screwed up with the cartridges, or was it a necessary evil in your opinion? Word is that a cartridge may cost $16 to manufacture, and that it makes physical games financially unsustainable if you're selling your game at less than $70. And they quote tweeted Kano off of Bluesky. I don't know who Kano is. I checked, and I don't know who they are, so I'm sorry. But they say any game that's retailing below $70 is going to use a game key. Word is that cards cost an astonishing $16 per unit. I don't know where this information's coming from. Imagine selling a $40 game like Bravely, remove 30% for the Nintendo cut, $16 for the cart, shave off some more for the retailer and shipping, and there's not much left. Unsustainable. What do you think?
I think that, for one, if that's true, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. If the math's that way, but I'm not going to pretend that I know how much of a cut Nintendo takes on physical sales. I don't think they charge 30% on physical. But again, I could be wrong. I'm not an expert in any way in what Nintendo publishing agreements look like.
And to be clear, we don't know if this user is either.
I don't know who Kano is. I don't know how much a Switch card costs. I don't think this is going to be true, because here's where, I mean, Daemon X Machina, yeah, it's a $70 game, but we're seeing that key cards are not being rolled out globally, right? Like, not every single game is on a key card. Some games that are on key cards in one region are on full fat cards in other regions. So I just don't know that it boils down to something as simple as that. And I also don't know that Switch cards cost $16 to produce. That feels too high. But again, that's based on just a mild understanding of the technology underneath and the scale at which things reduce in price when you order loads of them. So it's really hard for me to say. I mean, I'm a big digital buyer for Switch in particular. So for me, I don't know. I don't find key cards offensive in any way. I think they're just an improvement over something that was, I'll take these over the code in a box that we were likely going to get in its place. And that for me is the big thing here. Like, it enables me to play them offline. I can then loan you my key card and you can use it. I just see it as an upside to something where the alternative was an eShop only release or a physical release that's just a code.
I guess my only concern, and I think the only concern that anyone should have, is, are these going to be downloadable in 20 years?
Right.
I think that's really the only question you need to be asking. Otherwise, I find the game key cards inoffensive.
Yeah, it's really a matter of, is Nintendo building a platform like Steam that is going to continue on, and this will just be the eShop that they use perpetually in the future? Or are they going to, with Switch 3 or whatever the next Nintendo console is, are they going to say, hey, we're doing a whole new eShop and we're shutting the old one down? Then it's a problem. Until then, I think we're fine. But realistically, I don't think the economics are going to work out on the whole cost of the card. I think that will, like any technology, it'll come down in price if it is indeed that high right now.
You also have to wonder, like, when it comes to like buying a game digitally on the eShop, you technically own that license. But when it comes to like a game key card, you just have the license physically. So I don't know, like, Nintendo can verify that you own a game through your account if they somehow change eShops in the future or whatever. So then what happens to the game key card?
Yeah, and not to sound too I mean, let's face it, in 20 years from now, there will be some mechanism by which Switch 2 games will be made available on consoles
Nintendo
without
Switch
the need
Online?
for an eShop. And then that key card should still theoretically work as long as you're able to find a way to sideload the game.
They're going to bring back the Nintendo Power, like, kiosks. You're going to go with your little cartridge. You're going to plug it in, and it's going to spit out a new cartridge with the game on it for you.
Perfect.
But that's a good question. That's something that I think needs to be answered. But I have a feeling we're not going to get an answer until the day has arrived,
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm with you. I don't think the eShop's going anywhere. And even into like whatever the next console is after Switch 2, whether it's a Switch or not, I have a feeling it will still be the eShop, and that content will still be available. I think they would be, quite frankly, stupid to abandon it at this point. Like, too many people are invested in that ecosystem. You can't pull the rug out from under them. Not again.
No, I think those days are over.
Yeah, good. I agree. I think that's going to do it for our mailbag today. We had a nice meaty episode. I hope that everyone who's listening or watching on YouTube, if you wanted to get a Switch 2 pre-order, I hope that you managed to get one. If you're part of our Discord, there was there was some crashing out happening last night. there was some dread amongst our audience. But I know a lot of you did get pre-orders, and I hope everyone will get a Switch at launch if they want one. So let us know. Like, I want to know what your experience was. Did you manage to get a Switch 2 pre-order? Did you even want a Switch 2? Let us know in the comments below. And we'll see the consensus on that. Maybe we'll talk about it next week. But if you want to be part of our community, Steve, what do the people do?
If you want to join us, head over to patreon.com/gvgaming to find out how you can get involved. For as little as $5 a month, you can get access to our Winner's Circle, which will get you each and every episode of not just The Win, but any other podcast we do a day early. It'll also get you access to our discussions. If you want to go up to our $10 tier, you can get your name in the credits. That's the GVG Gold tier membership. Much more info is available, like I said, over at patreon.com/gvgaming. And you know what? Thanks for just considering checking it out.
Yeah, we're going to give you hugs and kisses all night long. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a high offer.
It is.
But thanks for hanging out with us. We'll be back next week with another episode of The Week in Nintendo. And until then, keep the games good and the vibes greater. Bye now.
Bye.